Welcome to my channel Alien Signal. The Galactic Academy of Civilized Species prided itself on order. Order in thought, order in biology, order in classification. For nearly 4,000 standard cycles, it had catalogued the known sentient races of the spiral arm, placing each neatly into categories that made sense, at least to the scholars who ran the institution. Garden-world species were delicate, slow-evolving, dependent on stability. Midworld species were adaptable, balanced, and predictably resilient. And then there were the Deathworlders. That category, more than any other, fascinated and unsettled the Academy. Deathworld species came from planets where survival itself was a daily battle, extreme climates, violent tectonics, deadly predators, toxic atmospheres, or all of the above. These species were rare, volatile, and often difficult to integrate into wider galactic society. Which was precisely why the lecture hall was full. The Hall of Biological Extremes shimmered with soft violet light as dozens of species filled the tiered seating. Long-limbed scholars from oceanic worlds floated in nutrient spheres. Chitin-plated analysts clicked softly as they adjusted their data pads. Gas-based entities pulsed faintly in containment fields. At the center podium stood Instructor Thalek, a tall, reed-like being from a low-gravity world, known for his meticulous lectures and his disdain for imprecision. And so, Thalek began, his voice amplified into a calm, authoritative tone. We arrive at the final classification for this cycle, Deathworld Traits and Behavioral Indicators. A murmur rippled through the hall. Near the back row sat a single human. Cadet Mira Elson leaned slightly forward, elbows on her knees, listening. Humans were new to the Academy. Not entirely unknown, but not fully understood either. Officially, Earth had been categorized as a mid-tier death world. Dangerous, but not exceptional compared to the worst planets in the catalog. Unofficially, opinions varied. Thalek gestured, and a holographic display flickered to life. A rotating model of a hostile planet appeared. Jagged mountains, lightning storms, predators stalking across crimson plains. Trait 1, Thalek said. High tolerance for environmental instability. Deathworld species evolve under constant threat, temperature extremes, geological upheaval, unpredictable ecosystems. He tapped the display, and data streamed beside the planet. Trait 2, accelerated reflex responses. Survival requires immediate reaction to danger. Another shift. Trait 3, aggression is a baseline survival mechanism. Deathworlders exhibit heightened territoriality and rapid escalation in conflict scenarios. Myra's brow furrowed slightly. Thalek continued. Trait 4, redundant biological systems. Many possess multiple organs performing similar functions to ensure survival despite injury. A few students nodded, their appendages flicking in agreement. Trait 5, psychological resilience. Exposure to constant threat produces individuals capable of enduring stress levels that would incapacitate garden world species. Mira shifted in her seat. The lecture was accurate, technically, but something about the tone felt off. Thalek moved to the next slide. Trait 6, high pain tolerance. Deathworld species frequently ignore or override injury signals in order to survive immediate threats. Trait 7, predatory instincts. Even non-carnivorous Deathworld species often exhibit strategic hunting behaviors. Trait 8, social bonding under duress. Cooperative behavior emerges in extreme environments, though often limited to small groups. Mira inhaled slowly. Still accurate. Still incomplete. Trait 9, Thalek said, propensity for violence. Deathworld species resolve conflict through force more frequently than through negotiation. That was when Mira sat up straight. Trait 10, limited long-term stability. Deathworld societies often experience cycles of rapid growth followed by collapse due to internal or external pressures. The hologram shifted again, now displaying comparative charts. Taken together, Thalek concluded, these traits define the Deathworld classification. While such species can be valuable allies, they must be approached with caution. Their inherent volatility. Stop. The word cut through the hall like a blade. Every head turned. Mira stood. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't needed to. There was something in the way she said it. Calm, firm, absolute, that silenced even the ambient hum of the chamber. Instructor Thalek froze. Cadet, he said after a moment, interruptions or not. Stop, Mira repeated, softer this time, but somehow more commanding. A ripple of unease spread through the audience. Thalek straightened, his thin frame stiffening. You will explain yourself. Mira exhaled slowly. You're not wrong, she said. About any of it. A few students exchanged glances. Thalek's posture relaxed slightly. Then I fail to see the issue. Mira stepped down from her seat and into the central aisle. The issue, she said, is that you're describing symptoms, and calling them definitions. The hall went quiet again. Thalek tilted his head. Clarify. Mira gestured toward the holographic list. High tolerance for environmental instability, she said. You list it like it's a trait. Like it's something we are. She shook her head. It's not. It's something we learned. A faint murmur spread. Same with aggression, she continued. Same with reflexes. Same with resilience. You're looking at the outcomes of living in a dangerous environment and assuming that's the whole story. Thalek's voice sharpened. The Academy relies on observable data, cadet. Not sentiment. Mira met his gaze. This isn't sentiment. She stepped closer to the podium. You say Deathworlders are aggressive. But you don't ask why. She pointed to the display. On a world where something can kill you at any moment, hesitation gets you killed. So yeah, we act fast. We fight when we have to. She paused. But that doesn't mean we want to. A few of the scholars shifted uncomfortably. Mira continued. You say we have high pain tolerance. That we ignore injury. A faint, humorless smile crossed her face. We don't ignore it. We just don't have the luxury of stopping every time it hurts. Silence. You say we form small, tight social groups under stress. She nodded slightly. That part's true, but you're missing the bigger picture. She looked around the hall. On Earth, we didn't just survive because we were strong or fast or aggressive. Her voice softened. We survived because we learned to take care of each other. Thalek crossed his limbs. Cooperation is already listed. No, Mira said. You listed it as a side effect. Like it's secondary. She shook her head again. It's not. She turned fully to face the audience now. Let me tell you what a Deathworld actually teaches you. The room was utterly still. It teaches you that you're fragile, she said. That no matter how tough you think you are, there's always something bigger, faster, or more dangerous. A few students leaned forward. It teaches you that you will get hurt. That things will go wrong. That sometimes you'll lose. Her voice didn't waver. But it also teaches you something else. She placed a hand against her chest. That the only way you make it through, is together. The words hung in the air. You call it, social bonding under duress. She gave a, small, incredulous laugh. We call it trust. Thalek said nothing. Mira stepped closer to the hologram again. You say Deathworld societies are unstable. That they rise and fall. She nodded slowly. Yeah, that happens. Her eyes flickered with something deeper now, something older. But every time we fall, we rebuild. She looked at Thalek. Every time. The instructor's posture shifted, almost imperceptibly. Mira continued. You're studying Deathworlders like we're anomalies. Like we're problems to be managed. She gestured to herself. But we're not just the result of a harsh environment. Her voice grew quieter. We're the result of choosing to survive it. The hall remained silent. You want to know the defining trait of a Deathworld species. Mira asked. No one answered. She nodded once. It's not aggression. It's not resilience. It's not even adaptability. She paused. It's persistence. A subtle ripple passed through the audience. We don't stop, she said. Not when things get hard. Not when we're scared. Not when it hurts. Her gaze swept across the room. We keep going. We help each other keep going. Another pause. That's what you missed. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the Lek turned back to the holographic display. The list of traits hovered in the air, suddenly, incomplete. He studied it. Then, with a deliberate motion, he dismissed it. The hologram flickered out. A quiet gasp spread through the hall. The Lek faced Mira. For 4,000 cycles, he said, this academy has categorized species based on observable characteristics. His voice was steady, but different now. Your argument challenges that framework. Mira didn't look away. Good. A faint ripple of tension passed through the audience. The Lek tilted his head. Persistence, he repeated. A unifying trait rather than a collection of symptoms. Mira nodded. He turned slowly, looking out over the gathered students. Then perhaps, he said, our classification is incomplete. That word carried weight. Incomplete. Not wrong, but not enough. The Lek inclined his head slightly toward Mira. Cadet Elson, he said, you have provided a perspective not currently reflected in Academy doctrine. A pause. It will be reviewed. That was as close to an admission as anyone had ever heard from him. Mira exhaled quietly and stepped back. The tension in the room shifted, uncertain, but no longer dismissive. A student from the front row raised a tentative appendage. Instructor, they asked, does this mean the classification will change? The Lek considered the question. Then he said, it means we will ask better questions. The lecture did not resume as planned. Instead of continuing the list, the Lek opened the floor. For the first time in Academy history, the discussion of Deathworlders was not about what they were, but why they were that way. And what that meant. Mira returned to her seat, the quiet hum of conversation rising around her. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel victorious. She just felt heard. And for a human, sometimes that was enough. As the session ended, students filed out in thoughtful silence. Some glanced at Mira with curiosity. Others with something like respect. The Lek remained at the podium, reviewing notes, his posture more contemplative than before. As Mira turned to leave, he spoke. Cadet Elson. She paused. Yes, instructor. He hesitated, a rare thing. Persistence, he said. Does it ever become a weakness? Mira considered the question. Then she gave a small, knowing smile. Sometimes, she admitted. She glanced back at the emptying hall. But most of the time, it's the reason we're still here. The Lek inclined his head. Mira walked out of the hall of biological extremes, the doors sliding shut behind her with a soft hiss. Beyond them stretched the vast corridors of the Academy, and beyond that, a galaxy that was still trying to understand what it meant to survive. And somewhere, in the endless catalog of worlds, a new definition was beginning to take shape. Not just Deathworlder, but survivor. And that, the galaxy was only just beginning to understand. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more cinematic science fiction stories.